Welcome to this short virtual tour of Dinan and St Malo. Please contribute to the making of these videos. It costs money, lots of time to go and do these things by clicking on the PayPal link below. Many thanks for your help in advance. Enjoy!
Here we are in Dinan, fortified town, medieval town, portrayed in the Bayeux tapestry.
So Dinan, one of the prettiest towns in Brittany without a doubt, is still a medieval walled fortress city or town today. You can see the walls here, you can see the beautiful towers. There are 12 towers essentially which still line the walls, the ramparts as the French would call them, and nowadays these walls, they overlook the River Rance. R-A-N-C-E, the Rance. There is a port. It's on the other side of the town from where I'm standing at the moment. Here I am looking to the northwest, out over the walls and back out towards the new part of the town. In fact, much of the new town dates to the 1700s. Here you can see a tower. This tower gives you wonderful views out over the town of Dinan. It's the l'horlogerie, I can hardly even say it. It's the clock tower. And you do get splendid views out over the town and the river from there. And you get a glimpse here of some of the timber frame buildings. As I walk down the main streets now, walking towards the main restaurant area here in the centre of the medieval portion of town, you can see these timber frame buildings. This one is exceptional, beautiful timber mouldings, carvings I should say, adorn its facade. As I pan to the right here, you can see the granite stonework in there. Look at the decoration. This corner of town was historically the mercantile quarter, and cloth making in particular took place here. And who knows, perhaps this effigy, this tombstone, was ordained to be the sculpted tombstone of one of those merchants. We'll never know. The face is gone. They used to make these in an industrial fashion, so they'd make the body and then they'd make the face to match when there was a new owner, shall we say. More timber frames, gorgeous. There was a big fire here last year, and one of the hotels in the middle of town, literally right in the middle of town, went up in smoke, completely destroyed. However, we do still see, here you can see 14th, 15th century buildings, timber frame. I discussed timber frame when I was up at Rochefort-on-Terre the other day. Go and check that video out if you're not sure what a timber frame building is. You are looking at them. The way they were built and designed, I think, is fascinating, and you can see the result is remarkable. Green oak, when they were originally built, green oak of course was mature in age, and today if you wanted to cut through that green oak, you would need a steel cutter of some form. It is as hard as steel. Oak, as it gets old, very often becomes harder than steel. Now we are walking into one of the many small squares that you find in Dinan. It's one of my favourite bars, restaurants, bistros, whatever you wish to call it. And here is St Saviour's Church here in the middle of town. So St Saviour's Church here in the heart of Dinan dates back to about 1120. Notable for a local hero, Bertrand de Guesclin. His heart is interred within the church. It was common practice in those days, many days ago, to separate a person's organs and donate them to different churches. Of course, then people could come and pay homage to those pieces, the hearts, the limbs. Here we are again looking down onto the River Rance and the port below. This road that you see beneath us is the main artery connecting this very high precipice, this very high mount on which Dinan sits, to the mainland, to the heartland of Brittany. You can see the dramatically high walls. This town was home to the Dukes of Brittany for several generations. And here we are looking due north up the River Rance, up to the English Channel, up to the Atlantic Ocean. Again, looking back to the Basilica Saint-Sauveur, standing in the English gardens, the Jardin Anglais, and here on the left you can see some abbey buildings and some monastic buildings for members of the clergy. We're talking about a medieval fortress, so we're not talking about French nationalism or English nationalism. England and France were connected by the sea, and of course with the Rance here feeding into the English Channel, the connections were very close for trade, for family ties. This was the way of life up until really the 1800s, when nationalism became important to member states within Europe. But this is the medieval world that we're stepping into here in Dinan. Back up onto some very high walls. I've been walking up the main thoroughfare into Dinan from the port, and you can see here I'm standing on top of the gateway looking down. The slate roofs, the granite walls of Brittany, and of course specifically here of Dinan. Very attractive, very beautiful. And there's two tour guide silhouettes there on the walls. Look at that. I'm going to pan around and we'll look down the thoroughfare that I mentioned a moment ago, the Rue Gerzoal. Takes you all the way down to the Rance River. This was a major trading port. I want you to understand that. It looks like a sleepy little town nowadays, but this was a major trading port here on the north coast of Brittany. Cloth, mercantile goods coming in from Holland, coming in from Britain. Fishing, textiles, metalworking, all of these things took place here. And that explains, of course, the high walls, the defensive mechanisms. Look at this gateway that will protect the main route up from the ports. Nowadays, just a sleepy little backwater. Dinan is population of about 11,000 people, depending on how it's measured and at what time of year. It's a popular tourist destination for the Brits. Brits come over on various ferries just to the north of us, and they find their way here into Dinan. And you can see why they love it. It is a beautiful little town. So imagine I'm walking up from the main port. Here I am walking through that main archway into the town itself. And ahead of me is Rue de Gerzoal, looking straight up a beautiful cobbled thoroughfare. On either side of me are some artisanal stores. You have craft shops, you have artistic shops, you have the occasional brocantery, antiques to you and I. But look again, timber frame buildings. Imagine how this would have been though once upon a time. No cobbles, this is a more recent invention. A dirt track road essentially, and on either side you'd have quite a squalid state of affairs, although these people would have been wealthier than many people were in the bigger cities because of trade. But dirty, no hot and cold running water, sanitation, basically throw it out of the window. The filth and the squalor would have been quite awful to you and I, and the pungent odours also would have been of interest, I'm sure. Historically, Dinan is known. It was portrayed in the Bayeux tapestry, famous tapestry on display in the town of Bayeux to the north of us, that represents and shows the chronology of the Norman landings, the Norman invasion of Britain. Taking a short drive to the north from Dinan, and here we are. Welcome to Saint-Malo. So it's generally accepted that Saint-Malo was founded by the Gauls in and around the 1st century. Of course, eventually occupied by the Romans, and by the end of the 4th century, the Romans had built what we call today a Saxon shore fort here, where Saint-Malo stands today. Again, a promontory jutting out into the Atlantic, could control the waters coming in from the west, but more importantly, could control raiding by Saxons. And these shore forts dotted the coast of northern France and southern England. Again, holding complements of ships and men, a policing force at a time when the Roman Empire was crumbling. So you can see the islands that dot Saint-Malo. One of them was inhabited in the 6th century by a man called Aaron. He talked about the scriptures, he taught the scriptures in a very crude form way, originally probably coming from Devon or perhaps even South Wales. One of his adherents was a man called Malo. Now Malo was a young man. He took the stories, took the scriptures to the mainland, right here where Saint-Malo is today. Of course the town gets its name from him. And he set up a small monastery, which essentially was the founding of the modern town of Saint-Malo. I just love this portion of the walls. So we're heading in an anti-clockwise direction around the town, and you can see very high defensive walls facing out to sea. And also as a backdrop, the roofs of the town itself. These walls have developed, again, from the 5th, 6th century when there was an abbey just behind me. The walls have been developed, redeveloped and redeveloped again, and at various points in time small fortresses have been built around the town walls. In large part, and this is an interesting point, in large part, there's a friend of mine, there's Patrick Vidal, one of the French guys, one of Rick Steve's French guys. These defensive mechanisms were in large part to defend the fortress, not so much from raiders, but because it was a fortress of raiders. Saint-Malo is famous for its complement of Corsairs, pirates to you and I, and were a real thorn in the side of the French authorities, of the British authorities for many decades. The Corsairs of Saint-Malo go down in maritime history. Now in 1758 the British got so sick and tired of this piracy emanating out of Saint-Malo that they organised a raid on the town. They sent a squadron of ships in, and they did raid the slopes just up there beyond the statue of Cartier. They raided the slopes where there were a number of Corsair ships, and they burnt and sunk about 30 of them, finally erasing the problem of piracy here in the area. Here's a statue to Jacques Cartier, a man, nothing to do with watches or jewellery, but he's a man who is responsible, at least as far as French history is concerned, for discovering Canada. Certainly he was responsible for opening up the St. Lawrence waterway to Canadian furrowers and explorers, so I guess that there's a fair claim there. Now look at the buildings here, these wonderful granite buildings. You can see a lot of these in Saint-Malo, all the way around the inside of the city walls. The city was badly damaged during World War II. It was actually flattened during World War II. The Allies flattened it. The Germans occupied it, again because of its strategic location. And towards the end of the war, there were bombing raids and then naval bombardments, destroyed the city utterly. So what you see here now, inside the walls, is post-war construction. I do think it's very elegant, I must say. I enjoy it very much. Here we are looking up a street made famous by a novel called All the Light That We Cannot See. Based in Saint-Malo, the novel tells the story of a German soldier and a French woman during the war, 1939-45, here in Saint-Malo. We're in the middle of COVID right now, so there is social distancing, there should be mask wearing. Unless you're in your own little group or family group, you can see the bars and cafes are littered with people, not heavily trafficked at the moment, as you can see, quite sparse, but it is normally a tourist destination. Courtesy of Brittany ferries, you catch glimpses of the ferries in the distance. More views of some of these very, very beautiful, very elegant architecture here in Saint-Malo. These buildings are lovely. Still walking around the walls, still going in an anti-clockwise direction. We're heading back towards our starting point at the gates. And here we are, coming back to our starting point at the gate and at the harbour itself. If you've enjoyed this short walking tour of Saint-Malo, please contribute to the cost of making the video by clicking on the PayPal link below. And I thank you in advance for that. It takes a little bit of time to make these, as you can imagine, and not least of which to get here to do it. But thank you for your support. More to come in the future. Take care, stay safe.